Hi everyone, this is going to be a video on Samsara, Vedic perspective, reincarnation and karma. Okay, so Samsara is the birth and death life cycle. Now, as much as we can debate about reincarnation, this basically, I will be talking about some of the Vedic understanding, but at the very end, I'm also going to bring up some modern findings proving that reincarnation is actually what happens to the soul from going from body to body, as we see in this image of death and life, old age and disease, and all those things that happen in life. Okay, so let's go into it. The Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God. Now, there are many Bhagavad Gitas out there as far as translations and commentaries. The ones that I am going to be looking at is from A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And I'm actually looking at his first edition of the Bhagavad Gita because it is as it is, it's unchanged. His newer editions have been changed by his students. Nothing too crazy, but there are changes. So I like to look at the 1960s translation. There's also another one. I don't have it with me today. I think I left it in Mexico, actually. It's a big Bhagavad Gita. It's the radical translation of the Bhagavad Gita by Jeffrey Armstrong. And it is basically him taking out all of the the binary, like he and she, and I'm not he and she, but he, when it talks about Krishna, and also takes away the Christian, like the Christian terminology, okay, because you will find it a lot in these newer books as far as the English that's being used. So the Bhagavad Gita is the song of God. Gita means song, and Bhagavad or Bhagavan means God, or the supreme personality of all that is. And what we see in the background here is a chariot where we see Krishna is the charioteer, and he's holding, the reins, and he is pulling his best friend Arjuna here. And they are in the battle of Kurukshetra. So the Bhagavad Gita story can be found in a larger epic called the Mahabharata. And in the Mahabharata, it explains the relationship between the Pandavas and basically the story of the Pandavas and the Dhritarashtra and Krishna and all of these things. And in the middle of it is the Bhagavad Gita, because this is a part where we see this culmination of a battle happening between families. Now, the Bhagavad Gita or the Mahabharata is to be said to have happened 5,000 plus years ago, the end of Dwapara Yuga. Now, this is the beginning, it marks the beginning of Kali Yuga, which we have been in for over 5,000 years. And this is where Dharma stands on one leg. And in Kali Yuga, we notice that it is the tendency is hypocrisy and quarrel. Now, the battle of Kurukshetra is sorry, I spelled that wrong, but it's fine. The battle of Kurukshetra is about a family, and it's about the Pandavas. And basically, Krishna actually takes a seat as a charioteer, but he ends up having to use the Sudarshan chakra, as we see in this picture. This is a big epic, okay, guys? So I can't... what am I going to do? I can have a whole course on the Bhagavad Gita, but this is just kind of to get us kind of understanding what is happening in this story and why this comes about. So the battle is happening between one family. So you literally have uncles on one side, elders on one side, sons on the other side, family on the other side. So you literally have a huge battle. It is said to be the biggest war that the world has ever seen was this battle of Kurukshetra. Now, there is this the main person that is being highlighted here is Arjuna. Now, Arjuna is a warrior who basically has this dilemma because he doesn't want to fight his family. So he asked Krishna, because Krishna tried to take a neutral stance because he didn't want to be a part of this war, but he said, I will be your territorial, but I will not fight, okay? And so in the very beginning, as they all are getting ready to prepare for this battle and they're sounding the gongs and all these things, Arjuna asked Krishna to take him to the middle of the battlefield, to go closer to the other side. And when he goes to the middle of the battlefield, he realizes his guru, his uncles, his elders, his cousins, they're all on the other side. And he goes into this point of saying, how can I fight and kill my family? Right? If we were in these positions, we'd probably be the same way. Now, a lot of people take the Bhagavad Gita as a metaphor for our mind, that our mind is Kurukshetra, and we are in a battle between what to do, what is right, and to renounce, and maybe wanting to renounce everything and say, I don't want to have any part of this. Okay, so what happens is Krishna begins the Bhagavad Gita. He starts to console Arjuna with knowledge of the soul, knowledge of yoga, knowledge of dharma, and all of these different beautiful things. Really, if you don't read any other Vedic scripture, I would definitely suggest reading the Bhagavad Gita, because everything is in here. And that is why it's like the sweet cream of the Vedas, okay? So the yoga. So we talk about, there's different chapters in the Bhagavad Gita, and it talks about the different yogas. Now, yoga means the link with the supreme. Okay, yoga does not mean posture. It doesn't mean technique. It literally means link. It means coming and connecting to our higher source. Now, there is karma yoga, Sankhya yoga, Bhakti yoga, and Gyan yoga that is found in here. But there are all different nuances, and really Krishna covers all of it, okay? So, because Krishna is the one singing this Gita, right? He's the Bhagavan. Karma yoga is the path of selfless action. So when you're actually working and doing your job, but you are releasing the attachment to the fruits, and you are not attached, and you just do it in a more selfless, devotional kind of idea. Like you're not attached to the fruits, basically. Sankhya yoga is the path of analytical knowledge. Bhakti yoga is the path of devotion. So bhakti means devotional service. So now not only are you doing selfless action, but you're actually doing it for God or goddess. Gyan yoga is the path of knowledge. Now, the difference between Sankhya yoga and Gyan yoga is Sankhya yoga is analytical, and Gyan yoga is like trying to find that moksha, that liberation through knowledge. Okay, so when we talk about these different aspects, we want to understand a little bit about the soul in the Vedic perspective, because that's the way that we're going to be able to learn about all of this stuff. So what the soul is called, it's called the Atma. Now, the Atma is located in the heart, and they say that the Atma is like a tip of a hair, a tenth of the tip of a hair, okay? Very, very, very tiny, and it's located in the heart. This is why when someone has, let's say, brain damage, they literally can be stuck on a machine, but they're still considered alive because their heart is beating. Whereas if the heart stops beating, nothing works, okay? So this just shows that the heart is the seat of the soul. Now, the Atma, the soul, is never created and never destroyed. Bhagavad Gita 2:12. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So this is from chapter 2 in the Bhagavad Gita. And this is just basically saying that we as souls, we're never created. Okay, we always are. And then another one from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2 as well, 18. Only the material body is perishable. The embodied soul within is indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal. Therefore, fight, O descendants of Bharat. Because at this point, Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna, hey, you cannot kill anyone, okay? You cannot be killed. And this is why we understand that we are not created and we're never destroyed. The qualities of the Atma are Sat Chit Ananda, full of eternality, knowledge, and bliss. This is what the heart is. And we have to understand that it's not about changing or evolving into a spiritual being. It's about remembering that we are spiritual beings, that we are Sat Chit Ananda. Now, there is a difference between a liberated soul versus a conditional soul. Now, a liberated soul is someone who is not covered by the material nature. They do not forget who they are, and they come to help others become liberated in this world. Now, Krishna is one of those liberated souls. We can also go further because he is Bhagavan. He is being called Bhagavan. He is a manifestation of Vishnu, but is actually, anyway, that's more philosophical talk. But yeah, this can be considered someone who comes in a liberated state and is not conditioned and never forgets who they are. Whereas us, we're conditional souls. We forget who we are and we're covered by Maya. We're covered by illusion. So what we have to go through in this material world is the journey through Maya, the journey through illusion. Now, if you're like, I don't get it, I'm going to just drop a little bit of more philosophy for you. There is a thing called the Tatastha Shakti. Now, the Tatastha Shakti is this space between the spiritual world and that connects the spiritual world and the material world. They say the material world is 1/3 of creation and the spiritual world is 2/3 of creation. Okay, so it's a lot bigger than the material world. Now, the Tatastha Shakti is where the souls are, right? And it can be considered like nirvana for the Buddhists, but basically the soul is kind of like sleeping. And this is why there's never a time where we were created. So all souls are in the Tatastha Shakti. Now, when we awaken in the Tatastha Shakti, we're either going to be attracted to the light of the spiritual world, or we're going to be attracted to the light of the material world. This is something that is innate in us that we had to go through. And because we're all here in the material world, that means that we came to the material world because there was something here that attracted us. And this is our time to awaken back into the Sat Chit Ananda, to remember who we are, so that we can one day have moksha, we can have liberation through, the soul, and go to that spiritual world where there is no death, and there is no dying, and there is no old age or disease like there is in the material world. Now, a lot of people in the Krishna world, they'll say you can do it in one life. Now, I want to say that it sounds so beautiful. I wish we could, but it's a lot more of a science, and there's a lot of things that we need to clear before we can be that spiritual enlightened being. But I'm not saying it's impossible, but it does take many lives to get there. But guess what, guys? We have traversed about 4,300,000 life species to become a human. All right. So when we talk about karma, this is a word that everyone talks about. Karma is finish the last word, right? We understand karma as action and reaction. I also mentioned the karma yoga, doing action without the attachment to the fruits of our action or the results of them. So we have this idea of attachment versus non-attachment to the fruits of our action. The more attached we are to our actions, the more we will reap what we sow. And this is the reason why we want to be detached from our actions, is because it helps us to lighten up our expectations. Okay, life will give us what we need based on, you know, what we have sown in the past. So there are karmas that we are paying for from past lives. There are karmas that we're paying for at this moment, and there are karmas that we will pay for in the future. Karma is not neither good nor bad. Okay, it is not just a B. Karma is what makes the world go round. When we do something, we get a reaction. Einstein has his, relative theory and all his other theories that basically show that karma is a law of the universe. What you do, you will get back. You do bad, you'll get bad. Now, a lot of times people go, but hey, some people have issues, or some people do really bad things and they get really good things. Okay, this can be two things. This can be karma from the past, that they're reaping what they sow in this life from a karmic past life. And there can be the idea of they will reap what they sow later in another life, or later on in this life. Whatever it is, we are constantly, as we're in this idea, this samsara, we're taking our karmas from a past life and we're either burning them in this life, or we're going to have to burn them in the next. By doing karma yoga, by doing bhakti yoga, by doing devotional service, by having more of a connection to our atma, we can actually burn our karma faster, and then we can call on the mercy, because there's always mercy. Maybe we deserve really bad things in this life, but because of the mercy of, Krishna or God, Allah, Buddha, whatever you like to call them, they give us mercy and they say, okay, we see your heart. We see that we don't have to punish you so much because you're already doing the work. And therefore, there's mercy and compassion that can be given to us. So although karma is the law, there's always the exception of mercy and compassion. So there is no one, this is from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, there is no one who can remain without action, even for a moment. Indeed, all beings are compelled to act by their qualities born of material nature, the three gunas. We've talked about the gunas in another time about Ayurvedic circadian rhythms, but the gunas are sattva, raja, and tamas. Goodness, passion, and ignorance. We're always working in these, especially in the material world. Passion is always, passion makes action. So either the passion is going to be in goodness, or the passion is going to be in ignorance. Either way, passion is running everything. The point of bhakti yoga or higher yoga techniques and philosophy is that we transcend these gunas, that we even go above goodness. We transcend even goodness. This is meaning we're transcending all of karma. Now, a lot of people, especially in Buddhist societies, when it talks about desire or action, they say, don't take any action. Stay away from desire. No, okay, I don't agree. Why? Because desire itself is not a bad thing. It's like saying money is a bad thing. No, not money, but greed, right? It's not desire that is a bad thing. It's the desire for material sense gratifications that can be putting us in bondage. Whereas if we have spiritual desires and we want to awaken our spiritual life, that is actually desire being fulfilling a spiritual sense. So there's a difference there too. Reincarnation. So one of the things in the Bhagavad Gita explains, it's in the chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. If you don't have time to read all the Bhagavad Gita, it's 700 verses. And then if you have a book like this, it has commentary, so you can kind of understand a little bit. If you don't have the time to read it, then what you can do is you can read the chapter 2, because it's the contents of the Gita summarized. So everything in the Gita, everything that's explained in depth can be found in chapter 2, and it can be a way easier way to understand. So I'm reading this verse. It says, just as the embodied soul continually passes from childhood to youth to old age, similarly, at the time of death, the soul passes into another body. The wise are not deluded by this. So when we understand, and this is what is really big in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna was trying to tell his friend Arjuna, is, hey, we never die, okay? So if your duty is to fight, fight. That you are a warrior. If you were not to do your duty, if you were not to fight, then you would actually sin, right? And this word sin also is not found in the Bhagavad Gita, but it was translated like this many years of like going against your dharma, going against your soul's purpose, your soul's passion. That is the sin. Okay, it's not the drinking and the having sex and all these things. That's not the sin. The sin is going against your divine purpose. Now, when we understand that we are constantly changing from body to body, just like we change our clothes, then we start to become more detached from this life, death, energy, because we understand that I am the soul and the soul never dies. Therefore, the people that I know who have died, I don't necessarily lament because I know they never died. Now, of course, there's lamentation, there's grieving processes so that we can release, because they're not going to be with us in the physical, but there's other ways that we can connect with people. Speaking of death, but also, just understanding that we're constantly going through these karmic cycles through each birth and each death, that we come to this cycle and we're like, hey, I'm born in this type of family. I have these types of karmas. I've suffered these types of traumas. Perhaps I'm paying for some past life things, but it's okay. Why? Because now I'm aware and I am working towards moving in a higher state of being, because I understand that death is just a change of clothes. It's just the restarting of a cycle, and it's a part of life. Now, some of the modern findings of reincarnation, I love this topic, and I could possibly talk about it for so long, but again, these are just short videos so we can get just the gist of the things. But if you want to, dive deeper into these understandings, I would explore what you can find in different cultures when it talks about reincarnation and karma and samsara, because there are many different things that are coming out. Now, I will say, just be wary of people and their opinions and all these things. There's a science here, guys. There's a process, there's an understanding. And when we're using the English language, we're going to miss out on a lot of things because we bring in our own colonization and all these things. But when we actually study the Sanskrit and the mathematical principles that is the language of Sanskrit, then we can see that this is actually a science. And this is not just hoopla or hodgepodge, right? Whatever you want to call it. So modern findings, in the Catholic Church, before 533 AD, we have the Second Council of Constantinople. Now, this is where they basically decided that they were no longer going to allow people to speak of reincarnation. Why? Because if you allow people to speak of reincarnation, then you cannot sell them relics. You cannot sell them the fear of going to hell, of eternal hell, right? Because reincarnation, you're basically saying you get a second chance. There's no such thing as eternal suffering, because we suffer and then we take another birth, right? We got to pay for our karma, but it's not something that we're paying for our karma forever. What just God, what merciful God, what compassionate goddess or God would ever do that to their people? It's just illogical. It's unreasonable. It has nothing to do with love. So, we have to understand the history of the Catholic Church. This is not me giving you that history. I studied it. I've been through my academic training in Christian theology and Christian understanding and history, but it is very, very keen, a key to listen and to read and to understand where certain concepts were negated because of the agenda of the church. Okay, so the Bible also spoke about reincarnation. There are things like when Jesus said, or when the disciples were asking Jesus, "Are you the prophet Elijah?" Right? And he's like, "No, Elijah came, but you did not know." And he was referring to John the Baptist. Now, there's an article that I posted here, and you guys can read it. It's more like scientific. The guy's not trying to give too much bias, but he's just presenting some things about reincarnation in the Bible. It's called the biblical reincarnation, I believe. I posted it so you guys can read it and see about it, see these different things. But there were a lot of other stuff. Like one day, when they're walking with the disciples, and one of the disciples see this homeless man, and he said, "Is it this man's fault, or is it his parents' fault?" And Jesus said, it's not his parents' fault. Like you don't get the karma from your parents, you get the karma from yourself. So anyway, so there's this idea of like, is it this guy? Like, was he born because of something else? And so it was hinted, but again, it was definitely taking out, and anything that kind of alluded to reincarnation, especially around the time of the councils, was taking out and totally disregarded, because they had an agenda. They wanted to sell relics. They wanted to sell the afterlife, the eternal life. They wanted to do this. Okay, like if you are a Christian, please understand that this is not saying anything against Christ. This is facts about the Catholic Church. Now, in the real world right now, modern time, right? Not just 1500 years ago, there are TV series that are coming out. The Ghost in My Child. I also posted a YouTube video that you guys can watch. Some children who are having these flashbacks of their past lives, and they can really retell the stories of how they died. Perhaps they even have scars that show where they had the period, like, if they were shot by a wound, or like a gunshot wound, or all these things. So definitely, there are these different findings. Now, this TV series came out obviously more modern times, but there have been books all across the world, the cases of reincarnation. There's Dr. Jim B. Tucker, who has multiple books, but one of them is called Return to Life, where he's also doing studies and cases with children who remember their past life. But like I said, if you Google books on reincarnation, you can find them all over the world. You can find them older, recent, but there's such a huge finding on reincarnation in the modern world. If you are not convinced at this point, it's okay, because this is about realization. It's not about beliefs, guys. If you know anything about me, I don't believe in anything. I understand, right? Like, it's like, I believe in myself. Well, really? No, I understand that I have the power, right? It's a realization. That is what really makes your spirituality, your thoughts, your beliefs, your opinions actually real, is if you are understanding them. So this was a quick look at the Bhagavad Gita, reincarnation, samsara. If you have any questions, if you need more philosophical topics, or justification, I definitely can provide it. But just for the sake of your energy, for the sake of my energy, and keeping this as light as possible, this is that little synopsis of samsara from the Vedic perspective, but also the modern world. So thank you guys so much. And I do hope that we'll talk soon, and lots of love.